legendary Jeff Davis show, baby. Worldwide. You don't believe the Jeff Davis show is legendary? Google Jeff Davis show. Go do a Google search on the Jeff Davis show. Currently, anyway. I don't know what it'll be like, look like tomorrow or the next day or a minute from now or next month. But currently, the Jeff Davis show is an internet empire. Social media, internet empire. You Google Jeff Davis show, the best videos in the world, best news stories in the world, best commentary in the world, photos, my entire life, baby. And most importantly, my 30 years of advocacy as a broadcaster and a congressional candidate, opposing every war imaginable, opposing every drug war imaginable, opposing border security on this date, 14 January, year of my Lord, 2019. Legendary, baby. So just do a Google search of Jeff Davis show while it's still available. These world order times we live in, things could change minute by minute. Jeff Davis show, internet empire might not last long. We just don't know. Now here today, this is going to be one of those Jeff Davis shows that if internet remains, if the Jeff Davis show remains on the internet, if YouTube keeps this Jeff Davis broadcast on the internet, if the whole thing stays up, and this YouTube's allowed to stay on the net, it'll be one of the greatest YouTubes on planet Earth. Period. I'm going to be talking about 1993, Waco, Texas, Branch Davidians. Now, I ran for U.S. Congress the first time in 1990 here in Austin, Texas. Did a bunch of radio and TV shows, fell in love with it. Early 1992, Jeff Davis show began in a little cable room at the public access facility television in Austin, Texas, which arguably is one of the best in the country. There's like 1,300 of them across the country. Down here at Austin, the public access television facilities has huge audiences, live big studios, live callers calling in. It's just really a great thing. So I fell in love with it and did about 23, 24 years of the Jeff Davis show, virtually living down there at the TV facility. Not to mention radio. Nationally syndicated radio host for 10 years on the Liberty Works radio network. All of which, like I say, is available by Googling Jeff Davis show. The whole kit and caboodle. So I started my Jeff Davis show in a little cable cast, little editing bay at Austin Cable Television, or Public Access Television in Austin in 1992. And by 1993, February 28, 1983, the Jeff Davis show had its first major impact issue. February 28 February 1993 was the day I began hearing, I was actually at work, I think, I don't remember, but I start hearing all this. There's U.S. law enforcement, American law enforcement has this cult compound surrounded in Waco, Texas. Now, I've seen how the world order media operates. Some people call them the mainstream media, the lamestream media, the establishment media. What they really are is the world order media. And that includes political, politicians, media, even religious organizations. They're all part of the satanic world order media, or the world order operation that's currently slaughtering millions of people around the world. Now, this was a particular subject because this happened. There was about 150 American men, women, and children living in a church that were totally self-sufficient. Most of them had jobs. And on February 28, 1993, all of that changed for them and for the Jeff Davis Show and for the world. Because on that day, I started seeing this, hearing this cult shit, abusing kids in there. And I heard all this shit before with Saddam Hussein, and that's what these people do. They create enemies, demonize them, and then ultimately either jail them, exterminate them, and get away with it. And that's what happened in Waco, Texas in 1993. So anyway, on day one, when they started demonizing the Branch Davidians, at that time I had never heard of the Branch Davidians. I was not familiar with them. But I was suspicious almost from the first report. Law enforcement has a cult group and a compound. Those are, to me, to people who understand how the world order operates, those are just things you know that they do. It's their repertoire. So I was suspicious on day one what the hell was going on in Waco. And I knew I had forums, both radio and TV, to investigate and give the Jeff Davis Show side of it. So I began investigating it. And what I saw was, one day it was cults. Next day it was abusing kids. Next day they had illegal guns. Next day David Koresh said he was Jesus. It was like there was one lie one day. Well, that wasn't good enough, so we'll go with this today. And then if that's not good enough, we'll go with this lie the next day, and so on. Now, on the first day, it was an air-out assault. It was like an Army paramilitary assault on an American church occupied by American men, women, and children. Bullets were flying in from air and land. Helicopters shooting down. This is on American men, women, and children on American soil. And then they had it all surrounded and all this stuff, just shooting, and several Branch Davidians were killed, and I guess some of the BATF members were killed too, but I think that's all suspicious. Whether it was Davidians that killed them, or they killed themselves by accident, or I don't know, but men, women, and children getting fired on by a paramilitary assault are probably not going to do too much shooting. Probably going to be Winston Blake, a Branch Davidian, was actually eating a piece of toast in the cafeteria when a bullet came in, hit him in the head, and killed him instantly on that first day. Killed instantly, eating a piece of toast in the cafeteria. Branch Davidian Winston Blake. And another Davidian was shot up in a water tower. And so, anyway, the Jeff Davis Show had its first major issue. And the Jeff Davis Show, make no question about it, the Jeff Davis Show from Austin, Texas, both television and radio, was the lead broadcast opposing the FBI and the media lies on these people. Make no mistake about it. And I'm proud of it. That God led me into that circle, quite frankly. So ultimately, after they tortured these people, they played loud music and threatened them and lied to them about exchanging things. And after 51 days, April 1993, they sent tank drivers in, and according to court testimony, some of the children inside the building were actually killed by blunt force trauma from the walls and the ceilings coming down on their heads from the tanks driving into the houses, into their church. Flare technology was confirmed by the man who invented flare technology for a film that was actually nominated for an Academy Award. And I never heard a peep about this in the World Order media or the World Order politicians. Flare technology confirmed that there were either ATF or FBI snipers firing at the Branch Davidians that were trying to escape the burning church on day 51. They actually were firing and killing some of them. Their thinking probably was the less people that survived, the better for them. The less Davidians could tell their side of the story. So if they weren't killed by the blunt force trauma from the tanks or by the fire, then government agents were gunning them down as they were trying to flee the burning facility. This is your government doing this. At the end of the day, nearly 100 American men, women, and children, including 17 children, were slaughtered. Period. It was mass murder from the beginning. Over the years, I've got to know many of these cultists, tons of them, interviewed many of them on radio and TV. Clive Doyle, Catherine Madison, Sheila Martin, tons of them. I can't even really remember all of them. But I can tell you something, folks. They're not cultists. They weren't child abusers. The Jeff Davis Show actually had a video that we played during that 51 days of the director. It was a lady. And she was on video stating that the child abuse charges accused against the Branch Davidians, the Texas CPS investigated that and found no evidence. There was no child abuse going on in there. Secondly, what I learned was that the sources of information for the FBI that were peddling to the public and then to the media, who ultimately just parroted what the FBI said. They didn't question anything, didn't challenge anything. So the media, the whole thing, the law enforcement, the media, politicians all had blood on their hands on this one. But the main source of information that the FBI was receiving for all their child abuse and all this shit was coming from 3 disgruntled ex-Branch Davidians who had basically been kicked out of the church. These 3 people were the sources of many of the lies that were being peddled worldwide. For whatever reason, I don't know why the world order wanted the whole entire world population against the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. Now, I do know this, that in their literature, some of their literature, they talk about a satanic new world order, like the Jeff Davis show does. Now, their information about it is a little bit more biblically orientated, rather than the Jeff Davis show. Jeff Davis show focuses on the black nobility, the British royal family, the Rothschilds, all their satanic peddlers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations. You can actually see these people on TV. There's no theory about it. You can see them peddling lies. But I don't know why. Now, I've heard different theories from people over the years since the Jeff Davis show was the lead broadcast, and has interviewed many of these people, Branch Davidians, and investigated this for years. I've heard many theories why the Branch Davidians might have been targeted and ultimately exterminated. And I don't know if I, to this day, can honestly say I know why they were targeted. But what I do know is this shows how dangerous, absolutely dangerous, the world order can be. Just pick a person, pick a group, start demonizing them around the world, get public opinion against them, ultimately exterminate them, and get away with it. Because that's exactly what happened in Waco, Texas. To this day, see, the Waco Memorial's coming up here on, well, the 28th will be just in like 6 weeks or so from this date. That was the day of the initial assault. The demonization process. But to this day, there have been no indictments on any of the living tank drivers, any of the living off superiors that gave the orders to drive the tanks into buildings occupied by American men, women, and children. Bill Clinton was he was the president at the time, a Trilateral Commission lackey, New World Order hack. I think he should be brought into court and face murder charges. Bill Clinton all the way down. Janet Reno, I guess she's passed, so she can avoid it. But as far as I'm concerned, every government agent up to the president, up to Clinton, in 1993 that was involved in Waco mass murder of nearly 100 American men, women, and children on American soil should be in jail, should be indicted, period. Otherwise, there's a good possibility they're going to do it again. They got away with it in Randy Weaver. Ruby Ridge, Idaho, shot 14-year-old Sam Weaver in the back and his wife in the head while she was holding their 10-month-old baby. They got away with that one too. They got away with Kent State killing 4 students on May 4th, 1970. And U.S. cops every day get away with killing three Americans a day. You don't even hear about it on the mainstream news. Cops just kill people. Sometimes they shoot them in the back. It's been reported. And then they just investigate themselves, and they're back out on the force. So, whatever form of government you want to call it, the government's already is currently killing people. Here in America, I'm talking just here in America. I'm not talking about the world order using the U.S. military to slaughter millions around the world, bomb and starve millions for the great culling human depopulation plans. I'm talking about just here in America. Pretty much what my investigation concluded over many years of the Jeff Davis Show is that these basic conclusions. Number one, everything you heard about the Branch Davidians, like I say, I know many of them, interviewed many of them, been to the memorials in Waco. Pretty much everything you heard about them from day one, 1993, was just a bunch of bullshit, period. And that's putting it a friendly way. I couldn't get much more intense, but that's just putting it friendly. Number two, the FBI and the media were, and of course law enforcement, they're all co-conspirators. The FBI, the media, all of them were just relying their asses off from day one. Period. Number three, like I say, I don't know exactly why, but ultimately most of the Branch Davidians ended up exterminated. And number four, as of this date of 2019, they got away with it. In fact, during the court, it was the Branch Davidians on trial. They were the ones being tried in court. And a jury actually found them innocent, and then a Judge Robert Smith just said, well, the hell with the jury, and he threw most of the other survivors in prison. But it was the Branch Davidians on trial. After it was the government who drove tanks into the buildings occupied by men, women, and children, and reported in the court testimony that some of the walls and the ceilings coming down crushed skulls of children and adults inside the building and killed them. Blunt force trauma to the head. And it was the Davidians on trial, not the tank drivers who crushed skulls. That's what happened, baby. Once again, it shows not only are they bombing and starving people all over the world with this endless war on terror bullshit, which is synonymous with the Great Culling, which was planned back in the 1970s. Culling, by definition, means exterminate inferior species. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, the Great Culling. That's the war on terror, translated. So they're not only are they doing that, but they're very capable of exterminating mass numbers of Americans and getting away with it. These are the same people that do drug war terrorism on Americans. Cavity searches, asset forfeiture, raids, murder people and pets, take people to jail for alleged pot possession. The Wacos and the drug war terrorisms They're the same people that want to protect the American people from people who walking across an imaginary border with border security. Border security is simply this: mind control, Hegelian dialectic, conditioning the American public to accept a growing Orwellian police state on themselves. More cops, more DEA, ICE, walls, surveillance, drones, detention camps for immigrants, prisons, and of course, what everything boils down to, all financed by Federal Reserve Bank usury money, which is ultimately where all this bullshit ends up. They finance all this and profit from it. Wars, welfare, border security. Doesn't matter who they have to kill, what they have to do, what useful idiots they use to enforce it or to paddle it, like the media hacks and the political hacks. They do it. They do it all. So the whole Waco Branch Davidian experience in 1993 was one of the first major impacts for the Jeff Davis Show. Leading broadcasts opposing it in the world. And it still remains to this day. We've had a lot of them, a lot of major impact issues over the years. But the Waco, the Branch Davidian one, if you Google Jeff Davis Show, you'll see a lot of old YouTubes and videos and news stories about the Jeff Davis Show, interviewing Branch Davidians, all kinds of different things. Jeff Davis Show, Waco, Branch Davidians, or whatever. You'll see it. This is just kind of going down memory lane here in 2019. But still, nonetheless, very important information. Because if not for anything, other than the fact that it really shows just how dangerous the world order can be. Slaughtering millions abroad based upon lies. Slaughtered nearly 100 American men, women, and children in Waco, Texas in 1993. Exterminated most of them. Put some of them in prison and got away with it. To this day. Very important for people to understand when they hear all these politicians and media peddlers that have been peddling lies about wars and pro cops and pro everything that is good, pro drug wars. When they start talking about border security and some of these people don't give a shit about you. Zero. It's all about the world order. Advancing an Orwellian police state, tightening it up, tightening things up, all financed by world bankers. Period. That's what all this shit's about. Even the people that slaughtered the Branch Davidians are financed by world bankers. ATF, FBI, they're all financed by Federal Reserve Bank usury money system. Period. Everything. DEA, everything. Walls, border security, Fed Bank usury money. The world politicians, the world media, and the world religions work for the world bankers. the British royal family, black nobility, the Rothschilds are their bankers for the British royal family and the Vatican. These are people who create and finance wars for a living. Now, what the Jeff Davis show has done in this little video here, I compare it to the movie The Wizard of Oz. You've got this wizard who ultimately turned out to be fake when the curtain was pulled from behind him. But ultimately, he wasn't too bad of a wizard, because he ended up sending Dorothy home. The wizards behind the scenes that the Jeff Davis show has exposed for 30 years. And they're enforcers, the people that slaughtered the people at Waco and all over the world. But the people that are behind the string, or behind the curtain, those wizards that the Jeff Davis show's turning the curtain from, are wizards who create and finance wars for a living. They're not good wizards. And then you got the Trilateral Commission and these CFR politicians and media peddlers. They peddle the lies for the bad wizards. So they're bad too. They're accomplices. Period. And they sure did a pretty good job in Waco, Texas, by demonizing these people, peddling lies, ultimately exterminating them, jailing the most of them, the survivors, and getting away with. Did a pretty good job. But didn't fool Jeff Davis show, baby. Not from day one. I didn't even know those people. I'd never heard of the Branch Davidians till this shit came down. But I know them now, over 20 years later. And I know everything that was said about them was just a bunch of bullshit. Period. Nearly 100 men, women, and children were slaughtered by some form, whatever you want to call it, American law enforcement operation on American soil, and got away with it. So, my way of thinking is, if they can get away with it that